So a few years back, I think it was in 2018, right after I had first started digging into the book of Revelation, really trying to understand and interpret the book, I had a sort of a moment of clarity. And it was very alarming. It only happened for, over the course of just a very few seconds, but I all of a sudden had this, like I say, this moment of clarity where I saw something that nobody was really talking about. If you listen to most of the end time Bible teachers, they'll talk about, when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes, and that the rapture is going to happen on a day when everything is all peaceful, and it'll happen real suddenly, and then destruction will come on the world, with the seals and the trumpets and all of that. And so that the day of the rapture was just going to be like any other day. There wasn't going to be a lot of drama or trauma. And in this moment of clarity, I realized, well, let me back up for just a minute. In my study of Revelation, I actually kind of started the big focus in Revelation 12 because of that Revelation 12 sign in 2017. So it seemed to me like God was sort of pinpointing Revelation chapter 12 as being sort of the place to start. And then I realized that the whole end time deal is sort of encapsulated in Revelation chapter 12. The Revelation 12 sign, then we see, the catching away of the child. We see the woman fleeing into the wilderness, which will happen at the beginning of the Great Tribulation for Israel. The dragon chasing the woman, Satan being cast out of heaven, a bunch of events up until basically you get to the end of 1,260 days that the woman is in the wilderness, and basically that's when Christ returns. So it's sort of a whole overview in a way of like the whole book of Revelation, that whole time frame. And so I'm looking at the travail of the woman. The woman goes into travail. Israel is the woman. She's the one that gave birth to the man-child, who is Christ, who is going to rule all nations with a rod of iron. We know that before the child is caught up to God and to his throne, that, of course, the woman has to be in travail. If the woman is Israel, what's travail? Well, travail sounds like a war to me. And it's a war that I believe is it's the Gog-Magog invasion that I talked about in the last video. But at the time, I didn't make all of those connections with Gog-Magog. I just all of a sudden realized that Israel is in travail. There's a big war about to happen, and she's all alone. And I'm thinking, why is she all alone in her pain? Why? And then in this moment of clarity, I all of a sudden realized, well, the United States must not be around, or it must be incapacitated, or there must be something going on with the U.S. where we don't come and help her. Okay, that was in 2018. I made a really kind of short video on that. I don't know that it's still up anymore. I may have taken it down. A lot of the real older videos I go ahead and take down, so there's not so much on my channel to wade through. That's something that has stuck with me for a very long time. The travail of the woman, the war or invasion of Israel, and it's in the context of this war or travail of Israel that the child is born, that the child is raptured, caught up, harpazoed. You don't see that word harpazo very often in Scripture. Very few people talk about the rapture of the child into heaven. Okay, it was sort of a big deal in 2017, and then when the Revelation 12 sign, that starry alignment, happened in the heavens, and the rapture didn't happen at the same time, people sort of stopped looking at that. Well, that was just the first sign that took place in the starry heavens. The second sign is the one where the rapture occurs, and that involves the travail or of the woman, or an invasion of Israel. And it's in that context that believers are caught up to God and to his throne. There isn't going to be peace and safety when we are raptured, it's going to be in the context of a war or invasion in Israel. And then you just have to back up from there. If Israel is all alone in this war, in this travail, which every woman is all alone in her pain when she is about to deliver a baby. I don't care how sympathetic you are. There's only one person feeling the pain, and that's the woman who's about to give birth. Israel is going to be all alone in her pain, in her invasion, this thing that happens, and I believe it's the Gog-Magog invasion. That's described in Ezekiel 38 and 39. What that means is that the United States is the one who is basically the military, force that's backing Israel's security, and the United States must not be around to be able to help her, or in a position to help her, or politically, wanting to help her. Although there are many treaties in place where we're sort of obliged to help Israel, whether we want to or not, okay? Whether it's politically expedient, depending on who's in office or not, doesn't matter. We still have these, treaties and alliances and agreements in place. So, if it's the Gog-Magog invasion, and I believe that Magog is basically, it's Russia, along with other people who invades Israel. What that means then is the United States isn't really a player anymore. Russia is, but the United States is not. What happened to the United States? Why is the United States not a player on the world stage during the time of the end? And this is a question that people have asked for like years and years. When I first started reading, books on eschatology, people would go, why isn't the United States in end time prophecy? And I can tell you why. It's because she's insignificant. She doesn't play a part. She doesn't have a role. She's not located in the Middle East. She's not in the old Roman Empire of, Europe and Northern Africa and, Asia Minor. She's not part of the kings of the East who are going to come at the time of the end, at Armageddon. She's not a player. She's just not there. And you go, well, how can someone who is right now a world superpower no longer be a player in the end times? Well, that's sort of what we're going to be looking at today. What we need to do is look at the basic power structure of the world right now. Okay, so Satan is the prince of this world. He is the ruler of this world, of this present darkness that we're living under right now. We're under the shadow of Satanic rule all the time. Satan cannot rule the world by himself. He has to use people. It's men and women who have to rule the world. This is how God has set it up. He set it so that Adam would have dominion over the earth, and only people can have dominion. So Satan is the god of this world, but he has to operate through people. So rather than operating through a single person, like back in the day, or at the time of the Tower of Babel, for example, I believe Satan was operating through Nimrod. And Nimrod is the first kind of Antichrist person we see in the Bible. But later, Satan changes his tactic, and he operates through men, like at the time of Babel, who said, come, let us make a tower. Let us make bricks. Let's build a city. Let's make a name for ourselves. And so Satan operates through this group of people, okay, through a cabal. And I've talked about that, this Babylonian system that was set up right at the time of Babel and has been, going through up until now. Here's the deal with Babel. Babel was never judged for all of this hubris. Okay, for basically wanting to take control of the world, under Satan. But God knew that he couldn't allow this kind of rebellion to happen so early in the game. And so he didn't judge people at Babel. What he did was he mitigated the problem by confusing the languages. So that bought time. But the judgment of Babel was stalled. Okay, those people should have been judged for what they did. Rather, they were dispersed throughout the world, and they took this Babylonian way of thinking, the Babylonian systems that had been put in place in their embryonic form at the time of Babel. And now Babel Babylon is all over the world. Okay, that's what happens when you spread out and you have Babel in your hearts. You can take people out of Babel, but you can't take Babel or Babylon out of people. They bring it with them wherever they go. So Satan is operating right now and has been operating through what Revelation calls the harlot. Okay, the harlot is also known as Mystery Babylon the Great. Okay, so this is that great city of Babel or Babylon that has now spread. The city spread all over the world. Okay, so he operates through the harlot, who is actually, it's a cabal of people, a group of people that are over the rulers of the world. Remember, the harlot sits on many waters, and she rules over the kings of the earth. Okay, so it's a cabal that rules over the kings. It's also should be equated with rich and influential and powerful people. The other thing we know about the harlot is that she's in the wilderness. And the wilderness is the place of demons. So the other thing we know is that these people are demonically controlled. Okay, it's really important to understand that. So these demonically controlled people, this cabal, this harlot, and it's a system of control under Satan. It's a group of people. Eventually, he wants to take it from being a group to one guy, and that's the Antichrist, the beast from the sea, the beast who rises from the sea of death. Satan wants to take his false son, the seed of the serpent, and turn him into the ruler of the world. In order to do that, though, this has to go away. He doesn't want to rule through a bunch of powerful people, no matter how demonically inspired they are. What Satan does is he's going to use the harlot, this cabal, this world system, what is known as the New World Order, which is actually an old world order because it comes out of Babylon. Okay, we know it as, letter names like the UN, okay, the WHO, the Great Reset, the powers that be, the EU. But Satan is going to tear all this down. And she's called a harlot because he just uses her. Okay, he uses her. These people think they're going to be a part of this next kingdom, which is about to come on the scene. They're going to collapse all the present kingdoms. So the harlot thinks they're going to be a part of the phoenix rising from the ashes once this collapse takes place. But all of this is part of Satan's plan to collapse everything, all the powers that are in the world right now, including the harlot once she's outlived her usefulness. Right now, the harlot operates through 3 major cities, but also many other smaller cities, mostly in Europe, by the way. And these cities they're very interesting because they're not actually a part of the country in which they're located. So like Washington, D.C., for example, is like the military arm of the harlot. Our military is all over the world. Okay, that's located in a city known as D.C., which is not really a part of the United States. The financial systems of the world are located in the city of London, which is not a part of the UK either. It's its own thing. The religious system of the world is right now in the Vatican City, which is not a part of Italy or Rome. These cities are kind of a clue that the world is still being run by this city, which has simply taken all the various components, finance, military, and religion, and divvied them up over various cities in the world. But it's still one system that's operating. It's the Babylonian Babel system. Okay, Satan is going to destroy that before the beast begins to reign, because when the beast reigns, he's going to reign all by himself. Okay, the power is going to be vested in him, and even the false prophet only works wonders in the presence of the beast. Okay, so the power, Satan is going to give his power to the beast. He's going to remove his control from the harlot, but he never gave the harlot his power. He's going to give the beast his power, his throne, and his very great authority, as we read in Revelation chapter 13. So some of the other things that institutions that the harlot controls are educational systems, who gets to get what kind of education, how expensive it's going to be, the kinds of things that are taught, from preschool on through advanced degrees. The harlot controls medicine, how many doctors there are going to be, how many hospitals, who controls all this, the medicine that's people are allowed to get, the kinds of limitations on, vaccines and so on and so forth. Satan controls the entertainment industry through the harlot. Of course, that's probably centered in Hollywood and a few other places. The economies of the world, the banking institutions, politics are controlled not by people's elections and so on, because the people you get to choose to vote from are both being controlled by the harlot. Okay, she is the one who basically says you can vote for this person or that person, and they're both okay with me. And useful, okay? The harlot also controls religion. Satan has infiltrated into even God's church through the harlot organization, the Babylonian organization and system. Also, even things as simple as agriculture, the harlot has her fingers in. Like in some countries of the world, seed saving is illegal. You cannot save your garden seeds. That's against the law. That's weird, okay? That's overextension of control. So Satan, through the machinations of demonically inspired people, controls just about everything about our world. The things that we think of as being good and the things that are bad. And what Satan wants to do is to collapse the present system. And he's got the agreement of the harlot. The harlot thinks that's a good idea too, to collapse this present system so that something new can be raised up. Okay, it's out of the ashes. The phoenix will rise. What the harlot doesn't understand, though, is that she's not a part of that new thing that's going to be coming on the scene. Satan just wants to use his man, the false son, the Antichrist. Let's take a look at how this collapse may happen. Okay, again, these are just my ideas. This is my thought about this stuff. None of this is thus saith the Lord. This is a Bible study. This is an ongoing investigation. All right, so let's just take a look at how the world power structure is sort of looking right now. So Satan is at the top here, of course, because he's the prince of this world. And he has sort of divvied up the various areas, systems, institutions, and the harlot has control of them. So there's all kinds of institutions that I've named. The harlot also controls the kings, the world leaders, okay? Because if you control the purse strings, you control politics, basically. Now, next in line, if we're looking at world military powers, right now the USA is like top dog superpower. Russia and China are following very closely behind. They've invested quite a bit in bringing their militaries up to speed. In fact, I think they may have some things in their back pockets that we don't really even know about. So these superpowers right now are being controlled by the harlot. Okay, this world system. The finances, the backing, the propaganda and everything this is how it looks right now. The United States, Russia, and then China. What the harlot wants to do is see the population of the world go down. If you put any credence into the Georgia Guidestones, they want to keep the population of the earth at about 500 million people, which means, if we're at 7 billion now, that's a lot of people that have to go away in their estimation. So they're going to use the various superpowers to destroy the earth, as well as things like orchestrated famines and pestilences and diseases and fomenting wars and civil wars and, black against white and women against men and all kinds of divisions is how you collapse societies. What has to happen according to these people who are running the show, and remember, this is all demonically inspired, is we have to have the collapse of these nations, specifically the United States, which is the one that needs to go down next. Okay, in order to collapse economies, bring in price controls, which is something that's part of those first 4 seals, which, remember, the seals are Satan's agenda. These are things that he wants to do, and that God gives permission for Satan to do those things. They use all that stuff to sort of soften things up. Bible prophecy says that Russia is going to be part of an alliance that's going to invade Israel. So if this Russian alliance starts to invade Israel and nobody comes to help Israel, the guess there then is that the United States is no longer a player, or at least the United States is incapacitated. And this was that moment of clarity that I had in what happens to the United States? Why aren't we helping Israel? Anybody who's watching anything, anybody who's got any kind of discernment at all can look at the things that are happening on the world stage right now, things that are happening in the United States, things that have been happening with the virus, with the economy, with the supply chain, with even people's attitudes toward, one another, people's attitudes toward the world and military and so on. The United States is crumbling from rot on the inside. And all we really have to do is look at our very weak president, who is, I believe, a picture of what has happened to the United States. He's sort of the personification of, someone who outlived his prime. And I believe that's kind of what's happened here in the United States. Here's how this may play out. Remember, the harlot is in control of world economies. Right now, the dollar is the world reserve currency. All you have to do is collapse the dollar, and the United States will fall, and many nations will fall right after her. We're connected at the hip economically with China. That's a problem, because right now I believe China is our number one enemy, the number one enemy of the United States. Russia doesn't want to be our enemy, I don't think, but we are sort of forcing that country to be our enemy because we're not being reasonable with them with regard to Ukraine and other things as well. So Russia and China are sort of teaming up together. They're conducting drills with one another, and they all have alliances too. Alliances with Iran, alliances with, North Korea, various other countries. China has now spread herself all over the world, Australia, and all kinds of countries in Africa, in Asia, even, running ports in various countries, like for years and years and years, running the Long Beach port in California, and now operating ports in Greece, and I think even one in Israel. This is like crazy stuff, okay? But this is the kinds of things that have been going on. Saber rattling between China and Taiwan is going to come to a head, and China will invade Taiwan. This is going to be the thing that pulls, I believe, the United States into a war in, the Far East, into a war with China. And while our focus is in China, it may be that Russia will choose that time to invade Israel. It could also be that China, in association or an agreement allied with Russia, may actually invade or otherwise incapacitate the United States, whether through northern and southern incursions, whether through people who've been planted here in the United States, whether through an EMP or nuclear strikes or whatever. Basically, the United States is wide open for her enemies to take control. There is so much polarization and fracturing that's happened in the United States. So many people walking away from God, so much immorality and all of that, that we are a shell that is just ready to be, pounded on. And, not much left on the inside here. Once the United States is incapacitated, then Russia and her allies will invade Israel in the Gog-Magog War of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And it may be that Damascus will be destroyed at that time as well. After that, okay, the United States is going to be gone. And then after Russia invades, along with her allies, invades Israel, God is going to rain fire on Russia and on the coastlands. And that basically leaves China. And there are 10 kings, which I believe are going to be a Muslim or Islamic. It also leaves someone else, and that's the harlot is still here. Don't forget about the harlot. Okay, I think it's her idea to collapse the United States. God is going to get rid of Russia through raining fire on Russia, and God is actually the one who pulls this Gog-Magog alliance into Israel, take care of Russia. But that's all good as far as the harlot's concerned, because she wants to eliminate players. Okay. Because the harlot's goal actually is to reign underneath Lucifer and have Lucifer's guy on a throne. Okay, so basically what that does now is it leaves Europe as the center for harlot activities. Okay, the City of London, Vatican, Brussels, Davos, you name it. This is the place, the places from which the harlot is still going to be exercising control and authority. Remember that God is going to deliver Israel, so Israel will survive that invasion. And what happens then is, rather than Israel, fully trusting the Lord, she goes to look for assurances, and she is going to have a covenant with death with the harlot. So this covenant with death, which is found in Isaiah 28, a lot of people think this is a covenant that Israel makes with the Antichrist. No, it's a covenant that Israel makes with the harlot, hoping to be spared in any kind of future war or invasion or anything like that. What Israel doesn't know, and indeed what the harlot doesn't know, is that she is about to be destroyed too. Okay, the harlot is going to be destroyed at the sixth trumpet, which is the same day as the abomination of desolation. That's when I believe, these are my thinking, my thoughts, okay, that's when I believe, though, that Europe will be wiped out, okay? At the time of the abomination of desolation, the sixth trumpet will blow. China, who I believe is going to lead a 200 million man army, and 10 kings, and the beast, bad angels who are bound at the river Euphrates, who I believe are going to act kind of as the generals, are going to destroy the harlot. 1/3 of the population of the earth will be destroyed at that time, and I believe that's this one right here, that destruction. It's the destruction of the harlot that is the hour of trial that comes on the whole world. Okay, the hour of trial is not something called the tribulation. It's not even the great tribulation for Israel. The hour of trial is a literal hour, the hour, day, month, and year, when the beast and 10 kings who are given power for an hour destroy the harlot. Okay, that's when the judgment of Babel will happen. And remember, the harlot focuses power in cities that are not parts of other countries. Okay, but because they're located in these other countries, and the institutional control is sort of divvied up between different places, all you have to do is let go of the bombs. And then, and remember too, that at this time, you have all the watchers, the fallen angels who've been bound in the pit, who are also on earth at this time. And there's a lot of, also Satan and his angels have been cast from the earth at the time that the harlot is destroyed. So there is plenty of power to basically in 1 hour destroy. I think it's going to be Europe at that time. The harlot does not know these people, these rich rulers, people who control the commerce and the banking and everything, they don't know that they're not going to be a part of the beast thing, but they're not. Satan is going to get rid of all of these entities, except for China and the 10 kings. This force right here, this world power, is going to rise up, and they're going to be what I believe is the military arm of the beast. So at the time that the harlot is destroyed, the beast and the 10 kings and the 200 million man army destroy the harlot. At the time of Armageddon, which is like 3.5 years later, the beast, the false prophet, and the dragon have these frogs, these foul spirits that come out of their mouth, and they lure the kings of the east and nations to the valley of Megiddo, to Armageddon, to battle against the Lord. So China and the kings of the east, they're still in existence at the end of the reign of the beast. They're going to be gathered at the time of Armageddon, and that is when China and these kings are going to be destroyed. Okay, all of the world powers are going to be gone, and only Christ will rule and reign on the earth. At the time of Armageddon, when Christ returns, all world powers, all superpowers will be gone, including the beast, China, the 10 kings, Russia, the United States, you name it, all gone, and only Christ is going to rule. So after Christ returns, there is something called the sheep and goat judgment, and that's when all the nations of the world that survive, and there's going to be lots of people who actually do survive all of this, believe it or not. And I think mostly they're going to be people who live in South America, in Africa, Australia, parts of Asia. And these are people, they're survivors of what's been going on basically in Europe. That's sort of the focal point for the end times. But we know that the kings of the East are going to be around too. So yeah, so people in Asia are still going to be around. What God is going to do is he's going to judge people at that time according to how they treated his people, whether they were believers, people we refer to as the tribulation saints, or his people Israel. If they were compassionate and helped them, then they're going to go on to live in the millennial kingdom, that 1,000 years where Christ is going to rule. And if they weren't compassionate and kind, they're going to be going into a place of torment. So bottom line here, this is my best understanding of these things at this time. Things may change. Events are fluid. This is an ongoing investigation of prophecy. Anybody who thinks prophecy can be all nailed down, hard and fast, well, you miss out on a lot when you do that, okay? And I would rather explore all of these ideas here and, allow the Holy Spirit to work in my understanding and my reading of the Word than cling to stuff that, people developed, a long time ago before the end was here. The end is here, okay? We're seeing it play out in front of our very eyes day by day. And what this means is then, according to my understanding, you may think differently. That's okay. And I'm not dogmatic on any of this stuff. I'm willing to change my mind if new information comes in. That we will probably, if you live here in the States or Canada, whatever, we're going to see the United States collapse before we're raptured. This is that moment of clarity. The woman will go into travail. There will be an invasion because the United States isn't able to help. There's nobody able to come to her aid, and so she'll be invaded. She'll be the focus of these nations. And also, Israel has tons of natural gas there, which is something Europe really, really, really wants right now. Most of their natural gas comes from Russia. Okay, so they need to work with Russia. Once Russia invades Israel, well, that's sort of the travail of the woman, and then the rapture of the child into God's presence will take place in that context. So I'm not looking for peace and safety for the rapture of believers to take place on just a regular, normal day. I'm thinking things are going to get very, very bad. So people need to pray about this stuff. No fear. We don't have to be afraid. You know, we belong to Jesus. And if you belong to him, you belong to him, and you're his problem. He needs to take care of you, and he's promised that he will. So if we have food and we have shelter with these things, we will be content, and we will trust in the Lord no matter what. That's the foundation that we operate from every day. Really, that should be our foundation of trust and faith that we are operating from. We have no control over what goes on in the world. Okay, we don't have any control. That belongs to others who are controlling things, and ultimately to God. And whatever God wants is what's best. And that is something that I depend upon, that God will do only, ever, always the best for me and for his son and for his glory. So there's no fear in any of this, but our expectations need to be realistic. Okay, a little more realistic. And it's definitely not the rapture on any day, peace and safety. That is not how it works. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars, and more and more and more, as we see the day of our deliverance approaching. So let me know what you think in the comments section. Be sure and get a copy of the handout. It's the link to that's in the description box below this video. I hope you'll be prayerful, and I hope you'll be encouraging in the comments to one another. And until the next video, I pray you have a very, very blessed and peaceful day in your heart.